Welcome to Chuck's Game Tech. In this video, we're going to be looking at this budget computer from the mid-2000s, built by Equus Computer Systems under the brand name Nobilis.
Noble steed.
All right, I hope you heard that. She called me a noble steed. She think I'm a steed.
We are going to tear down the system, clean it, put it back together, and price the components with the use of the Internet Archive's Wayback Machine to get an approximate price of what the system would have cost if we had built it ourselves in 2006. Now, according to the sticker on the back of the system here, this is a Nobilis RTS i223M manufactured in July of 2006. RTS meaning ready to ship. So according to the specs listed here, this would have had an SIS 661FX mainboard, a genuine copy of Windows XP Professional, Intel 3.06 GHz Pentium 4 processor, DDR memory, integrated graphics, and a 10100 LAN and audio. In opening the case, it does appear to have a Foxconn motherboard installed. The inner side panel shows a quality control stamp from Han High Precision Industries, just Foxconn internationally. Looking back at Foxconn's case listings from 2006, we can see what series this case came from. Now switching over to Newegg's site, we can see a Foxconn case in the same series listed here for $49.99. The only difference being the front panel. You can see here on the side we have a vent for the CPU and for the GPU. For the CPU, there's an air duct helping it feed cool air, which could also accept a 90mm fan. These are sometimes referred to as a 3 GHz air duct. In the rear, it's equipped with a 90mm fan, and in the front, it can accept an 80mm fan. Now, removing the power supply, we have a Sparkle Power 300 watt ATX unit. Sparkle seemed to be their power supply brand of choice from all the reviews mentioning them and eBay listings where you can see the power supply inside. Here I'm opening up the power supply to check for any bad capacitors or other signs of damage. This power supply seems to be in excellent condition. I was even able to locate a spec sheet for this power supply. Looking through a product listing from Zip Zoom Fly from 2006, we see the power supply listed here for $31.99. We have a single stick of DDR memory, 512 megabytes, PC3200. 512 megabytes seemed to be the default amount for this system according to the spec sheet I found. The brand we have here is Kingston. And here we can see on zipzoomfly.com this stick of memory was going for $43.88. Removing the hard drive wasn't too bad. It's got a quick release lever here and it slides right out. We'll come back to the hard drive later. The front panel was pretty easy to remove. The disk drives also have toolless removal. The drive we have here is a BenQ CD-ROM, rewritable. This is another place where they saved some money. Rewritable DVD drives are about twice this price at this time. You can see here this BenQ model is selling for $26.99. Remove the original 90mm Foxconn fan. We'll get that cleaned up. Now we'll get the motherboard out of here. And the motherboard's another place where they saved some money. It's got an SIS chipset. They could have went with a more expensive chipset from Intel or even ATI at the time. I was able to find this motherboard on both zipzoomfly.com and newegg.com using the Wayback Machine. So we have a listing here for $60. And over here we see it listed for $46.99. And looking at the ports here, we have PS2 keyboard and mouse, printer port, serial, VGA, 4 USB, Ethernet, and standard 3 audio jacks. All the caps on this board look to be in good condition. Let's set the case aside for now. Removing the stock Intel cooler here, we'll see what CPU's underneath. Removing the cooler also shows that this thermal paste definitely needed to be reapplied. We'll remove the Northbridge heatsink as well and see what the thermal paste looks like there. So this stuff was strange. It had the consistency of chewed bubble gum. It was very difficult to clean off. In situations like these, I'll use WD-40 to dissolve whatever thermal paste is present, and then you can clean up the residue with rubbing alcohol afterwards. So this isn't the best stock cooler Intel had at the time for these CPUs, and it's not the worst either. There were some with just straight aluminum. The better ones had a copper core. This one seems to have a cold plate, but doesn't have the core that goes all the way through. A lot of the Pentium 4 CPUs were known to run hot. And looking here, we have an Intel Pentium 4 524 3.06 gigahertz, 1 meg of cache, 533 megahertz front side bus. This is a socket T CPU, also known as an LGA 775. This one seems to be a somewhat later release from Q2 of '06, built on the 90nm process. It's a Prescott CPU. This one has hyper-threading and 64-bit technology. In August of 2006, at the top of the page here, you can see ZipZoomFly had this processor listed for $91.90. Let's take a closer look at the motherboard here. This chipset was actually first designed for socket 478 and was then carried over to LGA 775. It has integrated Mirage graphics, also known as Real 256E. The South Bridge is a 964, which has support for SATA. The earlier 963 South Bridge did not. The integrated audio is Realtek ALC 653, and it has a Phoenix BIOS. The hard drive that was installed here was a Seagate Barracuda 80 gig 7200 RPM SATA hard drive. We see it listed here on ZipZoomFly for $56.50. Now that everything's all cleaned up, we'll get it put back together. A few other things to note about this system is this chipset does not support dual channel memory, it's single channel only. The integrated Mirage graphics were known to have terrible driver support and only had support for DirectX 7. While the integrated graphics on this system were fine for basic home and office use, they were not suited for gaming. This will become very apparent when we get to the benchmarking and gaming section of the review. The motherboard does have an AGP 8X slot, so upgrading the graphics definitely would have been an option. Comment below, let me know what budget GPU you would have gone with in this system. From what I could find, Equus didn't sell these Nobilis PCs directly. They sold them through resellers, and I couldn't find any pricing on any of these systems, so we'll do our best to approximate it. So while calculating this, we're just going to round up. We're not going to worry about any of the shipping costs or any of the rebates that were listed. So here it is. It came to a grand total of $487. If you were to calculate this using the Federal Reserve inflation calculator in today's money, this would have been about $759.64. For that kind of money today, you could build a really decent gaming computer with a dedicated GPU and an aftermarket CPU cooler. Now that we have it all put together, it's time to start it up. This being a computer from 2006, it's only fitting we start with 3D Mark 06. But unfortunately, it won't run on this system. The integrated graphics only support DirectX 7, and it can't even start the test. Moving on to 3D Mark 03, we immediately get a pop-up. Our system's only able to run one of the 4 game tests. It's recommending we install 3D Mark 2001 for a more comprehensive benchmark. Running the Wings of Fury benchmark, we can already see that the frame rate is very inconsistent. The highest frame rate we see is 52, with it dropping down into the single digits. It gets a final score of 134 3D marks. It's a very unimpressive and sad result. Moving on to our last synthetic benchmark, we'll give 3D Mark 01 a try here. Starting out here with the car chase benchmark, the results are better, but not great. Moving on to the second part of the benchmark, Dragothic, we see the frame rate drop below 30, even dipping into the teens. In Game 3, Lobby, it continues to struggle to hold a consistent frame rate. Unfortunately, it's unable to run Game 4, Nature, because it lacks hardware support. If you were running this benchmark in 2006, this would have been disappointing to see. It runs through a couple of fill rate tests and a couple of high polygon count tests next, before encountering another test it cannot complete. At the conclusion of the test, we end up with a 3D Mark score of 2,166 3D marks. We'll keep the score in mind when we benchmark Max Payne later on. According to the back cover, minimum requirements equals a 3D Mark 2001 score of 900, and the recommended requirements equals a 3D Mark score of 2,200. Given our lackluster results with our previous tests, I didn't have much faith Doom 3 would be anywhere near playable. We're running it at 1024 by 768, low quality, with all the advanced options disabled. I ran the time demo 3 times, and this was the best of the 3 runs. It was a complete slideshow. I even tried keeping the same quality settings and turning down the resolution to 640 by 480. That resulted in an average frame rate of 14.6 with a minimum of 0 and a maximum of 45. Our time demo results were an average of 5.1 frames per second. Next up is Far Cry, another game from 2004. Same as before, we're going to be testing at 1024 by 768 with low settings. So right off the bat, we can see that the water isn't rendering correctly here. Moving further into the game, we can see that the grass is not rendering correctly either. I went through a handful of drivers before I found one that would somewhat render the game correctly. Unfortunately, the frame rate didn't improve with a better driver. At 1024 by 768, the frame rate averaged 14.263 with a minimum of 2 and a maximum of 57. Reducing the resolution as low as it would go, 800 by 600 low settings, the frame rate improved to an average of 17.757 with a minimum of 2 and a maximum of 74. I thought we might try Halo Combat Evolved next, since it's a few years older than the previous games that we've tried. We continue our testing at 1024 by 768 low settings, and immediately we encounter an issue with the way the game looks. The NPC's outfits are gray, and so is Master Chief. Playing further, we also see that the Covenant have the same issue. Benchmarking gameplay, Pillar of Autumn at 1024 by 768 low settings. We had a average frame rate of 14.373, the minimum of 7 and a maximum of 28. Reducing the resolution to 640 by 480 resulted in an average frame rate of 26.057 with a minimum of 11 and a maximum of 62. Now let's take a look at Max Payne. Our earlier 3D Mark 01 benchmark results kind of indicated that this should be playable. I ran the tutorial on 3 different resolutions at low settings. At 1024 by 768, we had an average of 42.993 with a minimum of 22 and a max of 61. At 800 by 600, we had an average of 47.96 with a minimum of 28 and a maximum of 62. At the lowest resolution, 640 by 480, we had an average of 51.61 frames per second with a minimum of 29 and a max of 62. I did find the game to be playable at lower settings. Moving back further in time, we'll give 1999's Quake 3 a try. This game was built using the id Tech 3 engine. id Tech 3 was used by several other developers for their games. Though the game is older by now, it still had a strong presence in professional esports tournaments. Quake 4 was also out at this time, releasing in 2005. It ran on the same engine as Doom 3, id Tech 4. I benchmarked the game under several different modes, starting with time demo, and then moving on to 1v1 with a bot, and then a match with 15 bots, adjusting the graphics settings to fast, and then adjusting the video mode to 1024 by 768. This was for me the best balance between speed and visuals. With those settings, the time demo produced an average frame rate of 69. In a death match with 15 bots, the average frame rate was 58.463 with a minimum of 17 and a maximum of 92. Next up is The Sims from the year 2000. I was fairly confident this system wouldn't have any problems running it. The system requirements for this game are fairly low. 233 MHz CPU, 32 MB RAM, 350 MB hard drive space, 2 MB video, and DirectX 7. The game stayed in the upper 50s and 60s for the most part, occasionally dipping into the 40s. It ran fairly well. I did not try The Sims 2. My copy's on DVD. I was testing the system as is. Next, we have a couple of Gold Source games. First, we have Counter-Strike Condition Zero, then Half-Life. This version of Counter-Strike has updated character models, textures, maps, and other graphical tweaks. It was released in the year 2004. I have left the audio in these clips so you can hear what the onboard sound is like.
Sight. I see the bomber. I'm coming. They dropped the bomb. 3 left. I hear something.
Excuse me, Gordon, but
Hey,
I'm
Mr.
rather
Freeman,
busy now.
I had a bunch of messages for you, but we had a system crash about 20 minutes ago, and I'm...
Freeman? Greetings! My God, what are you doing?
Welcome to the HEV.
Hello there.
Activated. Munition level monitor
Gordon, we have complete...
Both of these games were playable at 1024 by 768. Half-Life had an average of 59.740 frames per second, with a minimum of 36 and a maximum of 74. If you're still watching this, thank you. This is our last game test, the 2004 sequel, Half-Life 2. At first, the game wouldn't launch. After trying more video drivers and a fresh installation of Windows XP on another hard drive, I finally got it to start working. Sort of. I tried a few different resolutions, starting with 1024 by 768. I didn't adjust any of the advanced settings for the test. You'll see why here shortly.
Rise and shine, Mr. Freeman. Rise and shine.
The frame rate at 1024 by 768 was awful. I decided to go in and turn the resolution down to the lowest supported and adjust the advanced settings. Attempting to adjust the advanced settings causes the game to crash. At one point, it even hardlocked the system and I had to completely reboot it. I set the resolution to the lowest and left the advanced settings alone. We still encountered other issues. There were multiple instances where the audio was missing. In the beginning, when you get off the train, you cannot hear the audio from Wallace Breen, or when Barney calls Dr. Kleiner.
Sorry, Doc, but look who's here.
Another issue is when moving into new areas where it has to load, the game will crash. And when you're in Kleiner's lab, there's a area on the floor where there's standing water and a reflection. It doesn't render. I started to wonder if maybe there's something wrong with my installation. So I popped in a random video card and tested, and it worked just fine. All that being said, Half-Life 2 really isn't playable on the SIS Mirage graphics.
Look who's here. Great Scott! Gordon Freeman!
And as you can hear, for some reason after installing the new video card, the missing audio is also restored. It also stops crashing when loading into new areas. This is just me goofing off.
Come out of there!
Uh-oh, everything all right?
And here in the lab, we could see that the water and the reflection is restored. So yeah, this system wasn't intended to be a gaming computer, as we can see from the benchmarks. But maybe this was your first computer, or you had one similar to it in the mid-2000s. This system would have been fine for handling your backlog of late 90s, early 2000s games. You are going to have to pay attention when looking at games to the system requirements, because a lot of games like this one here, it's on a DVD, and I mean, if you look at these minimum system requirements, Windows XP, 512 mega system RAM, this says 512 mega system RAM, 2 gigahertz Pentium 4 equivalent processor. Well, this has got a 3 gigahertz in it. 128 meg direct 3D compatible video card. Well, this has 128 megs of memory, but it's shared memory from the system memory, so this only effectively has 384 megs of system memory. So yeah, there's issues like that. And then when you look at the recommended specs, it gets worse. The supported video card chipsets, SIS isn't even listed on this. And other games like Halo, which meet the minimum system requirements, and the driver support's so bad on this thing that this game doesn't even look right. It doesn't run very well either. During this time, game stores still sold used PC games, so you could probably find some older games to play on the system until you had enough money to upgrade the video card. Its options for upgrading were also limited. This board's equipped with AGP, which is being phased out at this time for PCI Express. CPU support's also limited by the chipset to, Celerons and Pentium 4s. I'm pretty sure the fastest Pentium 4 this could accept is the 3.8 gigahertz Prescott with 2 meg of cache. It didn't have support for dual core CPUs, and it can only accept up to 800 megahertz frontside bus. During the testing of Half-Life, I did end up putting the GeForce 6200 in the system. That probably wouldn't have been my first choice for a video card for this system in 2006. It would have been a fairly cheap option, but I would have spent a little more money on something a little bit better. I think we'll do a part 2, and we'll look at upgrades for this system that would have fit in the context of the time period. I actually acquired this computer while picking up an older computer. In fact, I ended up getting 4 computers instead of just the one I went for. And I found myself drawn to this computer because it reminded me of my favorite time working with computers. I was fresh out of high school, working at my local computer store part-time, and I built lots of computers like this one, just for, regular people, somewhere for businesses. Oftentimes they'd show back up to the store wanting to upgrade the video card because their kid wanted to play a new video game. So yeah, with some budget upgrades, this system could probably handle games up to about mid-2007. I mean, it could have always been worse at that time. You could have had a Dell 2400 or a B110, an eMachine T2042, one of those systems that didn't have any AGP or PCI Express. I think this is where we'll end the video. Thank you for watching and hope to see you next time.